Welcome to another episode of the Sober Minded Podcast. This episode is exciting because this is a topic that I've been thinking about doing for a very long time, and I've been compiling information on this subject for a while. So I'm finally able to get all this information and get my thoughts out on this particular topic in one episode. And this topic is the oligarchies of the world. And so first off, what an oligarchy is it's a group of the few that rules over the many. So the few that control or influence the many. That's what an oligarchy is. And of course, there's many different applications of that definition. It looks different throughout history and throughout the world. And it's not even just about national governments. It's really about any sort of group that's the few that's influencing or controlling the many. And I also want to attach onto that these groups can be hidden. So they're not easily seen. It's not easily discoverable who's influencing or controlling the many. For example, everyone knows who the president is of their country, but there are groups that are influencing the public and the many that we may not know completely, or we may not be familiar with their names if we hear them. So really this episode is all about that, and it's about the different small groups that influence and control the many, not just national government, but again, the media, banks, corporations, entertainment, food, the production of food as well. And I'm going to start off with some of the light stuff, and then we're going to get progressively into the deeper and the heavier stuff. And then at the end, I'm going to cap it off with a biblical application. Of course, you can't forget that. It's probably the most important thing. And the reason why I'm combining this kind of information with a biblical application is because I think it's important, especially for Christians, to consider these things, because we can't turn a blind eye to the reality of the world that we live in and the system that is the system that we interact with on a daily basis. We can't ignore it and pretend like it doesn't exist. And as Christians, we should be the ones that are the most aware, because the Bible does speak about this. And again, I'm going to get to that at the end. I'm trying to move through this information pretty quickly. And so I'm just going to go ahead and start off with the first chart that we have here. And the heading says The Illusion of Choice, Media Consolidation. So this is about the media and how there are 6 media giants now controlling a staggering 90% of what we read, watch, or listen to. So I'm not entirely sure where this chart comes from, but I do trust it because I've seen it on many different news sites and business sites that are trustworthy. Some of them were left-leaning, but they didn't put a leftist spin on how they, interpreted this chart. So I'm pretty comfortable using a chart like this. So consolidation, and of course consolidation means when you're bringing something that's big and slimming it down to a smaller, more manageable area, so it's easier to deal with. And so here they say 1983. In 1983, 90% of American media was owned by 50 companies. Excuse me. So in 1983, there was 50 companies that owned 90% of American media. Now in 2011, and of course, as this is a few years outdated, more than a few, but this is outdated information, but it still holds to this day, and the number might even be smaller now, but there are at least 6 companies that own that same 90%. And the 6 companies are GE, I believe that's General Electric, and notable properties that they own: Comcast, NBC, Universal Pictures, Focus Features. You also have News Corp, who own Fox, Wall Street Journal, New York Post. And of course you have Disney, which is probably the most recognizable, which they own ABC, ESPN, Pixar, Miramax, and Marvel Studios. Then you have Viacom, they own MTV, Nick Jr., BET, CMT, and Paramount Pictures, Time Warner, CNN, HBO, Time, and Warner Brothers, CBS, Showtime, Smithsonian Channel, NFL.com, Jeopardy, and 60 Minutes. So some of the notable properties from these giant 6 companies and what they own. And you should be familiar with a lot of those names if you've watched some of the shows that are produced from these channels and these companies. You probably can deduce that the media that you're taking in is largely from these 6 companies, and the media that you take in from your day-to-day life comes from these 6 major companies. So continuing on in this chart, 232 media executives control the information diet of 277 million Americans. That's one media executive per 850,000 subscribers. An audience the size of San Francisco per one media executive. Total 2010 revenue for the Big Six was $275.9 billion. Television, the Big Six control 70% of your cable. And now that's not really cable anymore. Nobody watches cable, or at least the viewers of cable is greatly declining over the time. The movies, the Big Six box office sales hit $7 billion in 2010. That's 2 times the box office sales of the next 140 studios. And then we have mergers. AOL spent $124 billion to buy Time Warner in 2001. That's 6 times what Congress funded to rebuild Iraq. So that's basically just a general overview of what's been going on for the past couple years up to 2011. That's when this chart came out. So it is outdated information, but these 6 companies still control a lot of the media and the television and music that we all take in. So now the next chart here has to do with foodstuffs. So this is all food and products that you buy, largely owned by, I believe it's 11 companies. We have Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, General Mills, Kellogg's, Mars. I'm not sure what this one is. Unilever, Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, Nestle, and Kraft. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Right? Let me count that. I think I started with Coca-Cola, so that's 11. So 11 companies own a lot of the food that we take in. So there were 6 companies owning the media. Now 11 companies owning the food that we eat. So a lot of people say this is the illusion of choice. You think you're choosing because you're choosing, between some of these smaller sub companies and the subcategories of the larger companies. So you're really not choosing anything different. You're choosing just something, a different product made by the same manufacturer and the same corporation. And there's a lot of notable things here. Of course, you have Nestle. You have the chocolates, all the popular chocolates, or at least some of them. And then you have some other things that L'Oreal, so that's a hair product. And some of these other companies that I'm not entirely familiar with. But you also have Ralph Lauren, that's pretty popular. And then you have some animal food, some candy, other stuff like that. Ice cream, the Nestle drumstick ice cream. So a lot of different stuff from Nestle. And this is something that you'll notice if you take a look, even just a brief look at some of the names here. You will realize that you taking a lot of the stuff from one company. So you have Kraft, you have all the sodas that they produce: Canada Dry, Crush, A&W Root Beer, Welch's, Dr. Pepper, Snapple. And again, that's all from one company. And over here, Coca-Cola, they own a lot of these sodas and drinks, energy drinks. A lot of drinks that are extremely high in sugar. And over here, you have PepsiCo. And they have, and it's okay, maybe this chart is not necessarily saying that they own. They might own entirely, but they probably put money into it, either investing it or maybe they do in fact own it. But so we have Quaker, all the things that are under that. We have KFC, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, and some more drinks and stuff there. So very different from how it was back in the day. And I mean really far back in the day. Because when you would buy something, it would have the name on it, and that's the person who made it, or that's the company that made it, and that was it. There was no there's no charts to be made. It was one product to one name, and then that was it. And each product pretty much had its own company behind it. But it wasn't until I guess in the 50s and 60s and 70s when these companies really started pumping out a lot of different things. So you had one company making food, maybe making like shampoo or something, and then making clothes. And then so you had companies putting their fingers into a lot of different industries. And then over time, it just kept piling and piling. Companies were buying each other out. Now it's only down to 11 companies that own the majority of the things that we consume. And it's not just limited to the things we consume. It's other, for example, hair care products. They have toothpaste down here, deodorant, Pepto-Bismol, Vicks, toilet paper, paper towels, laundry detergents. Okay, so it's a lot of different things that these different companies own. It's not just food. And again, a lot of people say this adds to the illusion of choice, because you're not really choosing something different. You're really picking a different tentacle from the same octopus, shall we say. So it's not really choice, but I think that it still is, because these products they're not managed directly from the same corporation. They have their own factories, and they're managed by different people. You have different, almost like different leaders of each brand here. You have brand managers and factories, and there's a lot of different things there. Sometimes it's so different that it's almost like they're not even from the same company or the same corporation. So I think there is still a choice that we make. For example, you might not like mini wheats, but you like Fruit Loops. So, I mean, you're still making a choice there, technically. And I think it's still a valid choice that you can make. It's not like, well, you're not really choosing because it's all made from Kellogg's. Well, I mean, it's still a choice because you're choosing something different. They're both made differently. They might be made by the same corporation. There's still a lot of differences between Fruit Loops and mini wheats. So I don't totally agree with the illusion of choice slogan that a lot of people say. I don't think that this is a very good thing, though. I still think that this hurts a lot of the smaller companies, especially during the pandemic. You know, mom and pop shops were closing because the government didn't deem them as essential to stay open, or they just lost business because less people were going. More people were buying stuff online. They weren't going to these smaller shops that were owned by, you know, honest, good, hardworking Americans. Instead, everyone just ran towards the big corporations owned by basically soulless businessmen who just want to increase their take-home money and don't really care about the health and wealth of or the well-being of the American people, which is why you see these people making a lot of junk. And it's not just like junk food, but it's also junk for your skin, you know, for your hair. A lot of chemicals. For example, Head and Shoulders. I don't know who makes that. I'm pretty sure it's somewhere. Yeah, it's right here. So Head and Shoulders, that's made by Procter & Gamble. It's not the best thing for you. And that goes for everything else that's on here. They make a lot of money off of basically damaging your body. All right, so now we're going to get a little bit deeper into the hidden oligarchy of the world. There's only one world. So, you know, first we dealt with media, then food and other things related to that. Now, there's 3 investment firms that own corporate America, but they also own a large chunk of the rest of the world's businesses and corporations and companies. And so there's 3 particular corporations that own the largest chunk of American corporations, but not just that. Again, it's also the world. And the big 3 are BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. And they call them the big 3. And so this article is from the conversation.com. Not totally familiar with this, but I did scan through this, and it does seem like everything's okay. There's not really a political bent to it. Anyway, this article reads, a fundamental change is underway in stock market investing, and the spin-off effects are poised to dramatically impact corporate America. In the past, individuals and large institutions mostly invested in actively managed mutual funds such as Fidelity, which I'm going to add that Fidelity is the 4th biggest investment firm. But the article continues, in which fund managers pick stocks with the aim of beating the market. But since the financial crisis of 2008, investors have shifted to index funds, which replicate established stock indices such as the S&P 500. The magnitude of the change is astounding. From 2007 to 2016, actively managed funds have recorded outflows of roughly 1,200 billion, while index funds had inflows of over 1,400 billion. In the first quarter of 2017, index funds brought in more than 200 billion, the highest quarterly value on record. democratizing the market. I'm going to skip that section, and we're going to get into. And they have a chart here. It's not the greatest chart, so I'm not going to look at it because it's not as detailed as I would like it to be. But they do have another chart here that's pretty good, which is so market capitalization, and they have the thing that's shaded in the black here is companies where the big three represent the largest shareholders. So that's about 75% where they are the biggest shareholder in a lot of different companies. And we have the dark gray companies where the big three represent the second largest, so still a considerable amount, and that's up to about 85, 86%, 87%. And then in the next shade of gray, companies where the big three represent the third largest shareholder, and then the actual gray shading, companies where the big three are not among the three largest shareholders. So that's about 90. They have their fingers in about 90% of the market. And they have the number of companies on the right here. So it's 1,662 companies where they are the largest, 336, where they're the second largest, 293, where they're the third largest, and 1,591 where they are not among the largest shareholders of the companies. So that's still a lot. And that's a lot of power for just three corporations like that. So, of course, they own a monopoly in a sense. They don't own a complete and total 100% monopoly, but they do own a lot. So they have a lot of weight to push around and a lot of power to influence some of the companies that are under. So here we have another smaller chart here from Bloomberg. The four largest U.S. asset managers control a total of about 16 trillion U.S. dollars. And again, BlackRock owning 16 trillion. Vanguard, that is 6 trillion. Vanguard owning about 4 trillion. State Street, just a little bit above the 2 trillion, and then Fidelity closer to the 2 trillion mark. So these are the four biggest asset managers. That's how much money they're taking in. So the next question we have to ask is, how are these three investment firms influencing the companies that they're investing in? And really this goes for any company that is investing. So this is called ESG, or the environmental, social, and governance. And it's a type of investing. It's a strategy of looking for where to invest your money. And so this applies to really any business, any corporation, any investment firm. And the way that this site defines it, and by the way, this is a good site for anything about business if you want to look up definitions about stocks, investing, businesses, and other things like that. Well, they define ESG as a set of standards for a company's behavior used by socially conscious investors to screen potential investments. So basically it's a way of checking if it's a good idea to put your money into something. And so the way these companies use it is their particular social and environmental things that they consider when giving money to a company. And the reason why they do that is, I'll put it like this. The reason that they want us to believe that they do that is so that we can think that they're a morally good investment firm, a morally good company, and that there's nothing shady going on behind the scenes with what they're doing with their money. So this is a way for the people to see these investment firms, particularly these three that I was just talking about, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. It's for us to think that, well, you know what, they care about these social issues, they care about the environment, they care about, how companies treat their employees. That's another big thing that they consider. So they must be doing good things with their money, right? Well, that's what they want you to believe. And so with this ESG, that's a good way to get people to believe and people to think that you're doing something good when in fact you may or may not be doing something good with that money that you're putting into these companies. So now the way this influences the other companies that are that the three major investment firms are investing in is that because BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street have a lot of money and have a lot of power, they can use that to influence the companies that they're investing in, because the other companies, they actually want BlackRock's money, they want Vanguard's money, they want State Street, those three big investment firms, to invest into their companies so that they can get a piece of that big money that they have. So companies like Disney, companies like some of the media companies that we saw earlier, they want some of that BlackRock money. And so the way that they get that is by appeasing to their standards. Now, every company, every investment firm has standards that they have to follow. And so basically, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street are pretty much saying, all right, well, if you want some of this big money that we have, you got to play by these rules. And so they have a lot of rules. And again, these are socially conscious, they say. So things about, race and Black Lives Matter, and then the environment, a Green New Deal type of things. It leans to that leftist side. So these companies that want some of that BlackRock money, they got to play by their rules, and they have to be leftist. So that's what this comes down to, is BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, all the companies that they're investing in have to play by this leftist guidebook and leftist guidelines. And so when those companies behave that way, they're able to get funds from those three major investment firms. And that radically changes how those companies operate. And it also radically changes the way people think, because you have us, the regular people on the bottom of the totem pole. We buy things, and so we buy things from these companies that are influenced by this ESG score, which is why there's been a huge increase in wokeness in brands and in corporations. And again, because it's not just those three major investment firms, but it's also other investment firms, and also companies are following suit, whether they're getting money from BlackRock or not. The reason that they follow suit with those guidelines is because they want to get the attention of investors that have that same kind of ESG rating. And then, of course, they have to keep up that image of being woke so that they continue to get money from those large investment firms, the top three investment firms. So here they say in the article, it's environmental, social, and governance. So these are environmental issues which may include climate policies, energy use, waste, pollution, natural resource conservation, and treatment of animals. So, on the face of it, it seems like it's a good thing, okay? Like, that's not bad to make sure you're treating animals okay and not wasting resources. ESG considerations can also help evaluate any environmental risks a company might face and how the company is managing those risks. Considerations may include direct and indirect greenhouse gas emissions, management of toxic waste, and compliance with environmental regulations. On the face of it, it doesn't seem like it's a bad thing, but when you couple this with things like the Green New Deal, the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum, which I'll talk about in a second, you begin to see that this is all a leftist policy, and this is all very harshly left-leaning. And then you have the social aspect, which looks at the company's relationship with internal and external stakeholders. Does it hold suppliers to its own ESG standards? Does the company donate a percentage of its profits to the local community or encourage employees to perform volunteer work there? Do workplace conditions reflect a high regard for employees' health and safety, or does the company take unethical advantage of its customers? Well, the last part, they don't really care about the customers. They care more about having this image, keeping up this image that they are, for the people, by the people. They rather lie to reap the benefits of that lie than actually, tell the truth and follow the truth. And then you have governance. ESG governance standards ensure a company uses accurate and transparent accounting methods, pursues integrity and diversity in selecting its leadership. And there you have, again, multiculturalism, which I already had a previous episode on that, and is accountable to shareholders. So all these things, again, on the face of it, seem like it's a good thing, but when you have leftist ideologies infecting their thought processes, well, then you have a giant leftist-leaning monopoly of corporations and companies because of these three investment firms. So, again, Not a lot of people know about this, which is why I refer to this as the hidden oligarchy. Number one, it's hidden because, like I just said, not a lot of people know about this. And number two, it's an oligarchy because it's three companies influencing, or three investment firms that are influencing a large plethora of companies and corporations. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is something that's a little bit more popular. You might have heard about this, but this is the Bilderberg meetings. So Bilderberg is a annual meeting, or Bilderberg meetings are annual meetings attended by 120 to 150 political leaders, which there's the few right there in regards to the number of people that these people are in charge of, because they're political leaders, presidents, government officials, things like that, kings, other monarchs, and experts from industry, finance, media, and academia in Europe and North America. The meetings, held in a different European or North American country each year, provide a private, informal environment in which those who influence national policies and international affairs in the West can get to know each other and discuss without commitment their common problems. After each conference, a private report of the meeting is circulated only to past and present participants, and in the report, speakers are identified only by their country. The meetings were initiated by Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands and took their name from the hotel at Oosterbeek, Netherlands, where the first conference was held in 1954. An international steering committee generally selects different delegates each year. So that's the basic premise of the Bilderberg meetings. So now here's another chart, and this is a very interesting chart. So in the middle here you have, in the middle here you have the Bilderberg group, and this, I don't think this is everyone who's in the Bilderberg group, but this is notable people, and then their ties to different corporations and different government committees, agencies, and even political campaigns, which is very interesting because you have political campaigns on both sides of the political spectrum, which says a lot about modern politics. Basically, the fact is that these people are funding both sides of the opposition, and then when there's a lot of conversation about both sides, when there's fights between both sides, arguments, debates, things like that, these people that are investing in both of sides are receiving the benefits because they get the benefit of the attention, they get a benefit of the money that's flowing, that's moving into these political campaigns. And again, it's on both sides of the political spectrum, which shows that they don't really care about politics or the opinions of the people and who they're voting for, but they really care more about, again, increasing the money that they take home, increasing the money in their pockets at the expense of the unrest of the people in politics. So that is a pretty big problem. I think more people are getting wise to that, though. So you have they're investing in that, and just a lot of different stuff here. There's a lot of political and government agencies and committees. But then we get into things that you will be more familiar with. And they also add, excuse me, they also add things like the Skull and Bones Society, which is, for lack of better terms, a kind of a cultic kind of society, or more like a fraternity or something like that. Not dissimilar to things like the Illuminati. So that's interesting. But I'm not going to focus on that. You also have the American Red Cross, Afghanistan World Foundation. All right, now we get into more of the familiar things. Target, Ford, McDonald's, Staples, Xerox, Charles Schwab, FedEx, 3M, Microsoft, that's a big one, Raytheon. These are some of the military manufacturers. Boeing, they make airplanes. Raytheon makes weapons for militaries. Goldman Sachs, Google, Gillette, Apple, Walmart, Hasbro, a toy manufacturer, Bayer. So that's a lot of different things there. Then you have some of the banks, Chase, JP Morgan, and Dow Jones, media outlets, Washington Post, Fox News, 20th Century Fox, Disney. They have really, spread their tentacles into a lot of these different things here. And so, again, you have the few controlling the many through the ownership or through the investment into these different companies. Now, again, just like with the other three, the big three investment firms, what are these people doing? Well, if you look at the names here, which fortunately we can, so you got people, Bill Clinton, okay, Henry Kissinger, and I'm just listing the names that we're familiar with. David Rockefeller, it's another popular one. Melinda Gates, okay, George Soros, Dianne Feinstein, or Feinstein, however you want to say it. Yeah, and those names alone tells you a lot of the kind of people that, the kind of character that these other people also have, which, not the cleanest, they don't have the cleanest records, okay, they're not the best, not the best natured people, they don't have the best personalities, they're not the kindest, not the nicest, and for certain, they're not the most Christian. They don't behave like Christians, and that's not just because they don't claim to be Christians, but they're just not very nice, not very kind people, not very honest. And again, they care more about what benefits them and their friends, their buddies, and they don't really care about people. They don't really care about the majority of people, because if they did, they would be doing better things with their time, with their money, but in fact they're not. And that same goes for the three largest investment firms again: BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. So this is the Bilderberg Group. Nothing too devious, I'll say, not as devious as maybe the ESG, and because that was a really leftist leaning, but this is also very leftist leaning because you have a lot of leftist leaning people involved in this group. Excuse me. And again, the few people are influencing the many people who are influenced by these companies and have to deal with these companies and have to work in them, around them. And these people they got their fingers in all of these things. So now the next thing is something that I think a lot of people are become increasingly more familiar with: World Economic Forum. They've really been on like one of the top 10 most talked about things in the past couple of years. So the World Economic Forum, and specifically their Davos meetings, they meet in Davos. So again, this is a group of people, again, the few meeting in secret to figure out what they're going to do with the many. That's the main point that I want you to get from this. Most levels are dominated by a single job function. So you have top executives. 33.37% of the people meeting are top executives of different companies and corporations. You have people from academia. You have senior executives. You have board people who are board members. Head of business or head of religion. That's interesting. And not really much else I wanted to talk about this article, but the next one, this is a PDF of those list of confirmed public figures that are meeting in the World Economic Forum in Davos. So, head of state and government, 50 people; foreign affairs, 30; finance and economy, 43; trade, commerce, and industry, 27; central bank, 7; international organizations, 36. So these are the numbers of the people. So 310 people meeting, and these are each where they're from, where they come from, and their titles, and they have all the people named here. And I believe this is for the 2022 meeting. So you got people from Albania, Argentina, Austria, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Belgium, Botswana, Brazil, Bulgaria, Cambodia, Canada, Colombia. A lot of different places, and again, they're all coming together. This is all maybe not as closed off to the public as the Bilderberg meetings, but I mean, it's still pretty much in secret what really they're talking about in there when they meet together. So again, in a comparison to the many, if you add up all the people, all the citizens of each of the countries that they rule over, and you compare it to the number of people who are meeting here. These are the few. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do and how they're going to govern the many. Now, again, same thing as the rest of the things we look at on the face of it. Maybe it is a good idea that these people meet together and talk about how they're doing and how they're, some of the problems they're going through and how to help each other with that. But a lot of these people are not, again, they're not nice, and that's just to put it in the simplest terms. So some not nice things come out of that, and of course one of the things is the Great Reset, other things like that. They want us to eat bugs, okay, instead of actual food and actual meat. They want to inject weird scientific chemicals. They want to feed us science experiments instead of actual food. And they're working on growing, fake corn and fake things, genetically modified things. So it's not having a good effect. So maybe it's not a good thing that these people are meeting. Now, to the spiritual aspect of this, to the biblical application, I do have this pulled up here in openbible.info. This is a good site to look up Bible verses about a particular subject. So here, secret societies. What does the Bible say about secret societies and really things in secret? Well, we have Ephesians 5:12. For it is shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret. Now, in a second, I'm going to look at the rest of that passage. But just think about that. And here's the next one. For the Lord, this is from Amos 3:7. For the Lord does nothing without revealing his secret to his servants, the prophets. So there's a huge difference between how God operates and how these corporations are operating. These businesses, these people who are coming together. Again, the few, they're discussing how to influence and how to control the many. God does not do that at all. He has revealed to us everything that he has done, will do, and is doing right now through his word. And again, he spoke to his people by his servants, the prophets. Okay, he didn't hold any secrets from his people, or from the world. He laid it all out in a book. It's plain. It's available to anyone. Anyone can read it. Although I will say, in the Dark Ages, in the medieval times, the Roman Catholic Church owned a monopoly on the Bible, and look at the good that did. It did no good. I was being sarcastic when I was saying that. So it's not good that people restrict things and people keep secrets, especially on a large scale like leaders of countries. Isaiah 5:20 reads, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil." Okay, and I'll also add, that's what these people meeting in secret are doing. And who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. 1 John 4:1, "Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, for many false prophets have gone out into the world." All right. And then one of the things that I have a problem with this site is, the top couple suggestions are more helpful, and then as you scroll down, they're less helpful, and they have helpful votes. So at a certain point, you just start getting verses that don't really have to do anything with secret societies or whatever you type in. But the first couple suggestions are good. So again, I looked this up. Secret organizations, same site. John 18:20, Jesus answered him, "I have spoken openly to the world." Okay, Jesus does not operate. Jesus does not operate like these people, or these corporations, and these people meeting in secret. And Jesus goes on to say, "I have always taught in synagogues and in the temple, where all Jews come together. I have said nothing in secret." Again, Jesus did not withhold any information from anyone. He laid it all out. Everything was plain. Okay, he wasn't having secret conferences with the 12 disciples or anything like that. And then again, Colossians, "See to it that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit, according to human tradition, according to the elemental spirits of the world, and not according to Christ." Again, some of the things that are coming out from the World Economic Forum, they show that that group shouldn't exist, because the things that are coming out from there, the ideas that they're coming up with, it's overall having a negative effect on the world, and that's really their target. Their target audience is the entire world, and there's a problem with that. Globalism, these few people, they want the entire world to be on the same page and operate the same way. That's impossible, and it's going to lead to a lot of problems the more and more they try to do that. Yeah, I think the rest of the passages here don't really pertain to the secret organizations. But now let's take a closer look at Ephesians 5. In verse 6, Ephesians 5 verse 6, let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. I lost my spot. All right, verse 7, therefore do not become partners with them, for at one time you were darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. For the fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true. And try to discern what is pleasing to the Lord. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. It's kind of, what I'm doing right now, and really what Christian political commentators should be doing is exposing the darkness and the unfruitful works of the world. And in verse 12, for it is shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret, because of how horrible the things that they're doing. Verse 13, but when anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible, for anything that becomes visible is light. Therefore it says, awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise. And again, that's another goal that I'm trying to reach here with this. I'm trying to make you wise to what's going on in the world and expose these things to the light. Verse 16, making the best use of the time because the days are evil. Therefore do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. And do not get drunk with wine. The name of the podcast is So Reminded. Continuing on, for that is debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit, addressing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody to the Lord with your heart, giving thanks always and for everything to God the Father in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. So the language here is talking about darkness and light, bringing the darkness into the light, bringing the things that people do, the sins that people try to hide. They try to commit sins that are hidden in the dark, and the Christian should not be like that. Rather, the Christian should be the opposite, do good things in the light where everyone can see and, the benefits other people. And it's kind of not exactly like it, but it's kind of like the Matrix, where there's people who are stuck in the Matrix. They're stuck in the configuration of the world, in the system of the world. And you got to wake them up, get them out of there. And it's kind of like that. I know it's not an exact one-to-one comparison, but there are some similarities there. And really we're trying to expose, or we should be trying to expose, what these people are doing in secret. They're doing it in the darkness. And if it was really something good, why would they be trying to hide it? And again, I'll point back to the fact that the effect that these groups have been having on the overall world has been negative. So that really speaks to the purpose that they think they're serving. They think they're doing good, but they're not, because in my opinion, they're not trying to do good. They're, in fact, trying to do evil. And again, on the large scale, with the WEF and with the three largest investment firms, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, that's on a larger scale. On a smaller scale, you have the President of the United States. Compare what he has said to what he has done and what the current regime has done. An overall negative effect. And they know that. They're not stupid. They know how to get the outcome that they want. So they're not stupid. They know that what they're doing is bringing a negative effect. That's why they're doing it. And again, even on a smaller scale, you have governors and representatives. What are they saying? What are they doing? Does it line up? Most of the times it doesn't. And guess what? Most of the time, they're Democrats that are doing messed up things when they should not at all. So, and I know people will say, well, you're trying to make this like a left versus right thing. I'm not trying to do that. It might appear that way. That's just how the chips fall, honestly. Democrats end up doing worse things than Republicans. Even though both have the capacity to do bad things, oftentimes it's Democrats. That's really all I'm going to say about that. And that's really everything I have to say about this topic in general. So, I had a lot of fun recording this one, getting all this information out, getting it all in one place. I'm hoping it was helpful to you. I'm hoping looking at these verses gave you some spiritual insight on this subject. I'm hoping that you were benefited by this, that you were blessed by this. And I'm hoping that you guys will tune into the next episode, because the next one's also going to be just as interesting, maybe even more interesting. But in the next episode, I'm going to try to get on the Chat GPT program, and I'm going to play with that for a little bit. And I want to find out how it answers theological questions. So primarily, I'm going to ask Chat GPT, different theological questions, and I'm also curious to see how it will respond to the London Baptist Confession. So I'm going to ask it, the questions from the confession, and then see how it responds. And from the catechism as well.
Listen, I am not nice, I am not kind, and I am not wonderful.